or this time of the quick speed shot. Check it out, bam! I fixed the front frame rail on Project Rusty Junk YJ. I'm a professional, don't try this at home. Okay, so the last big hurdle before this thing can wheel is this rusted out frame rail. It's missing the whole bottom all along and through here, and then it's bad here at the steering box. So I've got some 2x4 like I fixed the rear frame with, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to saw cut it along the top of this. I'm going to leave the inside of the rail and about a half of the top, and then cut this whole front and bottom off, and then slip a piece of this in and overlap weld the top, plug weld the back, and this is just about a 1/4 inch narrower than the original frame. Then that'll give me some place to plate over here. But I'm going to make a new frame rail. Let me get the 2 bolts out of the steering box. I've been soaking them. Hopefully they'll come right out. And then get the cutter and cut this open. Oh no, I got super carried away with the cutting. What have I done? Let me show you. So the inside of the rail was super wasted. It was too thin. Where it hooked onto the spring perch mount, that was super thin. The tube, the cross tube for the front cross member, that was also junk. So I went and I cut all that out, right out of the way, unhooked the leaf spring here, and I've done what I said I was going to do. I've got this overlap piece for the upper part of this tube. I'm going to cut it off straight up and down here, because I would make this out of one piece of tubing, but I don't. This piece isn't long enough. My other piece isn't long enough either. So I'm going to cut it straight, and then I'm going to, with a straight cut on this piece, I'm going to finish out the frame rail. Just butt weld them together, and then I'll probably put a little fish plate on the outside of this. But I'm going to make a new frame rail all the way out. Got the steering box unbolted. What I'm probably going to do is take this piece of heavy duty angle iron here. It's like 3/16, and this will bolt to the steering box bracket, because my 2 lower bolts are going to be drilled up in here and have studs welded this, and then this is going to come up here and weld to the inside of the frame rail to stiffen it up, and then the 2 through bolts will still come through here with some sleeves. So it'll make the inside of this rail super strong to mount the steering box to, and it should be plenty easy. And for this tube here, I've got a piece of Schedule 40 pipe that fits really tight inside of this. I'm going to hole saw the end of these frame rails, sleeve it with a new piece of Schedule 40 pipe, and I'm going to go back into about here, because when I weld on some D-rings, it'll double this thickness up, and it'll be plenty well enough. I'll put a couple of plug welds. It'll stiffen the end of this up. I'm going to drive one in the other side and do the same thing, so this thing will be super beefy. So as you can see, I cut this right off. I'm going to use the overlap, be able to weld this all up and have the overlap on the inside, and all that. So this will be it's about the same thickness material. It's 11 gauge, just like on the back. So it'll be just like the original frame rails. It's just a little bit, still just a tiny little bit thin back here, but I don't want to get into the shot mount. It's going to be strong enough for this thing. And I got my brake line out of the way. I got my steering box out of the way. So I'm actually going to trim about 2 inches of this off, because it's got a little kick right here. Get rid of that. It's got a bolt boss there. Get rid of that. But that's hot. That's hot. Bam. Alright, bam. After a lot of cutting on my dull hole saw I got it here. So you can see the piece of pipe. This is schedule 40. I think it's 2-inch ODs, so it comes out to the right diameter here. It slips in this tube good. I'm going to drill a couple holes in this. I got to go into the center. I'm going to plug weld it to this pipe on the inside, weld it around here. But here you can see it works out good. I'll just weld it around both sides, and you can see the frame rail. I'm actually, because the way I built this with this overhang here up inside the original frame rail, I'm going to step this tail up the same dimension, and then I'll get this rail up to where it used to be 3 inches from the bottom of the rubber, and I'll weld it up. I'm going to fish plate the outside, and the inside I'll have the bracket for the steering box, and weld this up here. But it'll be super strong. But before I weld this together, I have to cut off the spring perch mount here off the original frame rail. Ow. I'll go ahead and I'm going to weld that to the bottom up on the bench and get this all up. I'll cut this off. But I think this is going to work awesome. It's going to be identical to what was here originally, except just a little bit narrower in the front, because that's the only tubing I had. But it'll be super strong and way better than what we had before. That ought to do it right there. Perfect. I'm going to weld this pipe in first. The frame rail can still come on and off now. So I just want to get this side locked in, so then when I fit this up, this will be good. So I pushed it in about where I want it, leaving about a 1/2 inch of stick out, and I'm going to leave about the same on the other side. So I'm just going to go ahead and weld this up first. That's nice! Alright, there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and just weld this up on the table, grind it down smooth on the inside for where the steering box bracket's going to weld onto it. And then we'll lay out the steering box bolts. Okay, I want to mount the steering box on an extra piece of support here, so I've cut a piece of angle iron and it bolts onto the cast iron bracket that bolts to the steering box. And since this frame rail is a little bit narrower and stuff, the lower bolts are going to come up here weird. So I think I'm going to weld this plate. Let's see if I can get this over. Yeah, I got it there. I'm going to weld this plate down like this so the bolts are underneath the frame, and they'll stay in there. Then I'll gust it on the outside, and then the 2 bolts for the upper bolts will go through the frame on some sleeves, so it'll be super beefy and super strong. So that'll be money, and I won't have to worry about the steering box breaking on this. Not that the tires are very big, but it's better to be too beefy than not beefy enough. Okay, so I'm about ready to tack the steering bracket onto the frame. I've welded the lower bolts to the bracket itself, and I got the lower part of the bracket bolted on and clamped into place. Now this bracket is going to overlap both the seams and the frame rail pieces to shiplap that on the inside. So I'm just going to tack this on the inside, and then I can pull the frame rail back off and weld it up solid all the way around up on the table. But this will be super strong for the steering box and make an extra mount action in there. It fits good. So let me tack it, and then we'll pull it out and weld her up solid. Bam, check this out. Got her all welded up on there good. I put a little piece on the, can you see that? Little piece, filler piece in here to tie it to the outside of the frame rail. Now I've drilled my holes for the outside bolts. This lower one is just going to get a thick washer, probably welded to the frame here. This upper one I've cut a sleeve, because originally there were sleeves that went through the frame, because if you just bolted this on the box tubing, the steering box would flex this outside piece and loosen up the bolts. So when I bolt it on, I'm going to stick the sleeve in and then weld it around the outside later. That'll make it through all the way through there. Okay, so I got the rail tacked in here now. Already welded up here. I had it clamped first, so I just tacked it, and then I pushed it where it had to be in the front here to get the shackle to line up. This will obviously bend down here out of the way. But I'm just going to start welding her up in. I got the overlap all the way in the back because I cut off the inner frame rail like that. I'm going to weld and tack and hammer that around. Then over here you can see this. I'm going to cut a piece of 1/4 inch round rod to lay in this hole, weld it to the outside, weld it to the inside, and kind of smush it around. Then I'm going to fish plate this over afterwards. This will be plenty of overhang here. I gotta make a little plate for the bottom just to shore that up. Then just weld it around the tube up here, and the whole thing will be welded up solid here all the way. And bam, there we go. I got her ground down a little bit. I don't think I'm going to plate this because I use that rod to fill this in. It's blended up pretty nice here. I did put a gusset plate on the bottom onto the old frame, and it's super gusset on the inside. So I think this will be all right on the outside. Just kind of rolled it over here with the grinder a little bit. That'll be good. But bam, check that out. And got her all smoothed up here. Welded around the tube both sides real good. This thing is locked into here perfect. I'll just have to bend the spring down and get the bushing up in here. But I'm going to go ahead and hit it with some primer now. Let that dry out, then bolt up the steering box, and then we'll take a step back and see what it looks like. Alright, bam, there we go. Check it out. It's all done here. I've gone ahead and welded up the big washer for the lower bolt here to the frame rail. Then welded my sleeve through the frame for the upper bolt here. It's bolted down. I went and reinstalled the shackle and the bushing. That worked out good. So now the suspension is hanging back on the new frame rail. I'd throw the tires on, but I want to do some, I want to build the bumper here and get all that done, and now throw the tires on. But pretty much one more video, we're going to have this thing wrapped up. Next time, I'm going to build a real simple bumper here. It's going to incorporate a receiver hitch tube. Now also, I want to get rid of this body lift mount here because I hate the look of the whole front end of the Jeep hanging out on this one little 3-inch plastic stanchion here. So I'm going to make a new cross member. It's going to support the whole nose and weld to the top of the frame rails here and kind of mask the fact that this has a body lift on it, at least from the front. Then that'll kind of tie into the bumper and all that. And then weld on a couple of D-rings, and this thing will be good. The next time after that you see it, we'll be out here wheeling it and see how it works out. So that's it. Bam, the frame rail's all fixed, and we're on to the final step of the puzzle. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe. I'm putting out new videos every Wednesday and Saturday. Hit the bell for alerts, tell your friends, and we'll see you right back here at the Quick Speed Shop, finishing out Project Rusty Junk YJ.